You are live. It is Sunday, June 7th, 2026. We only get one of these, so get busy living or get busy dying. We don't have a choice over here. I'm just trying to understand where our tax dollars go. That's what topic one is today. So let's break it down. The federal government collects about $5.2 trillion in revenue. Okay, $5 trillion. That's the money coming into Washington. The biggest source was individual income taxes. That's about $2.6 trillion. That's a little over half of all federal revenue. So let's keep that in mind, that our individual taxes, our income tax, is 50% of the annual revenue that the US government can spend. Got it. The second biggest source was payroll taxes and social insurance taxes. That's about 1.7848 trillion. So 1.7 trillion, roughly 1/3 of federal revenue. So payroll taxes, social insurance taxes, that's the money taken out of paychecks for Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, right? We pay that anyway. That's $1.7 trillion. So that's 1/3 of the revenue. So 80% of the revenue that the government collects so far is coming out of our pockets. Corporate income taxes brought in about 452 billion, or around 9% of federal revenue. So all the corporations. Excise taxes on things like fuel, tobacco, alcohol, and certain goods, that brought in about $106 billion. That's about 2%. And then you have customs duties, tariffs, estate and gift taxes. Those other receipts bring about 272 billion. So that rounds it all out to 100%. So the bulk of the revenue comes from our backs, our hard work. 80% of the 5.2 trillion, so over $4 trillion of that, is from our hard work, our blood, sweat, and tears, right? Everybody working for the weekend. That's how it works. Now, this is a pretty spiffy graphic. I like it. Our tax dollars collected and distributed. Well, it comes from us, right? So they go in your wallet and they take the money. You got to really visualize this, because then I think it helps us connect the dots. It's like, all right, they're really using my money. So whatever you don't agree with out there, it helps you kind of make it a little bit more tangible, if you will. So they're taking our money. It goes into the Treasury Fund. The president then proposes a budget, and that request goes to Congress. Congress has to vote on it. Of course, you have the House of Representatives, you have the Senate. Finally, it gets the president's signature. He authorizes the spending, and then you have a distribution of funds where it actually goes to those agencies and programs. So when you have the Department of Homeland Security, or you have, the National Security Agency, whatever, NSA, DHS, whatever, FBI, and we say, hey, this budget package, we're going to allocate 20 billion to this agency. It has to go through all of these steps: the collection, Treasury, presidential budget, Congress, presidential signature, and then finally, that money is not only earmarked, saying that it's allocated, but then it's actually sent to those agencies. So we should know a little bit about the process there, because it's a little arduous. Now, so where do our federal tax dollars go? Well, you can break it down between two aspects. You have the mandatory spending, which is what they consider mandatory spending. Our government is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, interest on debt, and other mandatory programs. And that's 70% of our budget. And then the discretionary spending is defense, education, transportation. So all of those agencies that we mentioned, national parks, intelligence agencies, that's discretionary spending. So there's the stuff that is absolutely essential to life, which is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. 70% of that, I think I like seeing that, because that that's the stuff that, those are like the bare necessities, if you will. What's discretionary, they have about 30% of that money is considered discretionary. So that means that the president can essentially do with it as he pleases. And you clearly see our president being extremely exploitative with where he allocates funding. So that's the breakdown between what is, again, absolutely essential for everyday life, for everyday Americans, and then what could we potentially do away with? What's discretionary? Because we don't have to spend that much on defense or education or transportation. It depends, right? I'm not saying we don't have to, but again, it's discretionary. So that means that they can pull that lever. You can't really pull a lever on Social Security. You can't just stop paying people Social Security because people's lives will suffer. These agencies, maybe we don't have to spend so much money on science and research. I don't know. But that's how they break it down for mandatory versus discretionary spending, 70% to 30% respectively. So 80% of the $2 trillion, $4 trillion of our money comes directly from our taxes. Everything else is tariffs, corporate income taxes, etc. So when people say, where do our taxes come from? We answer that. The answer is mostly workers. It is income taxes, payroll taxes. Together, these two categories make up it's close to 84% of federal revenue. So yes, we are funding our government. So I think at minimum, you should feel empowered here. Because again, in this representative democracy that we have, it's just so remote an idea, right? We cast a vote once every 2 years, once every 4 years, and then those people just have access to all of our resources, and that includes all of the money. But it's just like, hey, remember, it's our money. It's coming out of your paycheck. All of those taxes that you pay, I really want us to connect those two ideas, because again, you should feel a bit burdened, right? And you should also feel like, hey, it's my responsibility to understand and to help steer the conversation as far as where the money gets spent, because your money enables everything that the government does, the US government does. If we stopped paying our income taxes, we don't even have a country anymore. It's very important to understand the magnitude of our working power, if you will. Our spending, not necessarily our spending or purchasing power, but of our dollar going into our government's hands. Now, where did the federal government spend all the money? So again, the breakdown is 70% mandatory, 30% discretionary. The federal government spent about $7 trillion in 2025. So what does that mean? Of course, we are leveraging debt. So right away, the federal government did not only just spend the tax revenue in the $5.2 trillion, we also spent an additional $1.8 trillion. That's the difference. That's the federal deficit that we always talk about. Now, the biggest federal spending category was Social Security. That was about $1.58 trillion. That's about 23% of all federal spending. That money mainly goes through the Social Security Administration. So now you know what agency it's going to for retirees, disabled workers, survivors, and eligible families. Great. Okay. Second major category was Medicare, Medicaid. That's $1 billion. That's $1 trillion. That's 14% of spending. So now cumulatively, we are at 37%. That runs through human and health and human services, centers for Medicare and Medicaid services, and that pays for healthcare for seniors and some disabled Americans and the poor, right? We care. The way you remember it, at least I was told, is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. You care for the elderly, you aid the poor. Medicare, Medicaid. Then comes net interest on the debt. So we're paying about $1 billion a year. We're paying about $1 trillion a year, almost 14% of our federal spending, we're paying on interest. 14%. Like, that's insane. That is insane. That is an insane amount of interest. 14%. I mean, that equates to almost credit cards. Credit cards are anywhere between, 20 and 30%. But by the way, what happened to Donald Trump saying that all the credit cards have to slash their interest rates? What happened to that plan? You remember that? He gave him like 5 days notice. What happened to that? I don't even remember. So the interest on debt, that's not a program. That's just the cost of carrying federal debt. So 14% of our money, bam, gone. And it's the Treasury paying interest to holders of US debt, investors, institutions, pension funds, everybody holding our bonds. That is who the Treasury is paying. So they issue those bonds, and then we have to pay the people that buy up those bonds. Of course, China, Japan, the United Kingdom, Germany, all over the world, they're buying our debt because we have yet to default as the only developed nation that hasn't defaulted. Really, the only developed so far. China's defaulted, the UK has defaulted so far. So when someone says only 7% goes to defense, ask 7% in what? 7% of what exactly? Because the actual federal outlay table for 2025, national defense was about 13% of all federal spending. So if you compare defense spending to federal tax receipts, defense equals about 18% of what the federal government collected that year. So again, when we just throw these numbers out there, you actually have to look at the receipts. We spent 18% of our federal government money. So the money that we paid in, 18% of that went to defense. That's an insane number. I mean, and then we're paying 14% just on interest alone. Then there is something called income security. That includes household support programs like unemployment, food assistance, refundable tax credits, disability-related support. That's about $700 billion. So that's about 10% of our money. Veterans benefits and services, that costs about 5% of spending. That money flows mainly through the Department of Veterans Affairs. Medical care, disability compensation, pensions, education benefits. Transportation was about 146 billion. I mean, do you think we have good highways and bridges and tunnels? Aviation programs? Because that is the money that goes toward our infrastructure. We're spending 146 billion. Is that enough, in your opinion? I mean, our discretionary spending for national defense, we spent 917 billion. Could we take some of that money and spend it on transportation? Justice and law enforcement spending was about 85 billion. That includes the Department of Justice, federal courts, prisons, federal law enforcement, education, training, and employment. Social services was about 71 billion. That includes federal education programs, student aid administration, job training, and related support. Science, space, and technology was about 42 billion. International affairs was about 45 billion. So there's 5 giant buckets here. There's just 5 main buckets of where our spending goes. And that's primarily Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and health, interest on the debt, and defense. Those 5 categories alone are the core of the federal budget. And when people talk about cutting waste, that may be real in certain programs, but the big math is not hidden in office supplies. So 70% of our money, we really can't do anything about because it goes to these programs, right? It goes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You can't really subsidize those payments in any way. And if you do away with them, you can actually kill people. The big math is retirement benefits, healthcare, debt interest, defense, income support. Now, if we actually bring this home to New York State collected about $117 billion in state tax revenue. That was in 2024 to 2025. That's state taxes, not federal taxes. The biggest New York State tax was the personal income tax. That's about 61 billion or 52% of state tax collection. So again, with income taxes at the state level for New York State, they're collecting 50% of our money as well. So right off the bat, business taxes brought in about 31 billion, that's 27%. Consumption and use taxes, that's about 19%, 22 billion. Other taxes around 2%, 2.6 billion. But New York State does not only operate on state taxes. So it is different in New York. New York State also received about $100 billion in federal aid. So sometimes you just get money from the government, the federal government. So when you look at all New York State receipts, the state had roughly $117 billion from state taxes, $100 billion from federal receipts. So that's $217 billion, $25 billion from other receipts, and $4 billion from borrowing or debt related sources. So the number is roughly $244 billion, and New York State spent about $241 billion in that fiscal year. Where did that money go? Again, public health, $115 billion. When you combine state and federal funds, that's nearly half of all New York State spending. So the majority of all of the expenses in the United States, including at the New York State level, so the United States and the New York State level, the majority of it goes to our health, our well-being, which is a good thing. I think that's a really good thing, because I always wonder, like, where the hell is our money going? It's the discretionary portion that we have to question. Do we have to spend this much money on education, transportation? Are we spending enough on these agencies, on these programs? The second biggest area for New York State was education. That's 62 billion. That's a quarter of state spending. That includes public school aid, SUNY, CUNY, tuition assistance, STAR, and other education programs. Transportation was about 12.6 billion, public welfare 14.2 billion, public safety 10 billion, general government was about 17 billion. What the hell is general government in New York State? I don't know. I don't know what the hell that means. Debt repayment and reduction was about 3.8 billion. So in New York State, just like the federal level, the budget is not mostly one small mystery bucket. The largest buckets are healthcare and education. New York State, that's 75% of our money. The country collects 80% of their money from us, and they're spending, again, they're spending around 37% of their money on Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. 37% of our money goes toward our government spending at the federal level. 75% of the New York State level goes toward health and education, which is good. It's good to see that the majority of these budgets are being spent on the bare necessities, in my opinion. First glance, of course. So just to restate, at the federal level, your tax system mostly funds retirement, healthcare, debt interest, defense, and income support. At the New York State level, your tax system and federal aid mostly funds Medicaid, healthcare, schools, colleges, transportation, and welfare programs. So that's the map. The majority of the money comes from workers and payroll. That is our money. That is the list of taxes that they take out of our checks. So then we kind of have to go back to this graphic, right? Because am I happy with where our tax dollars go? How much money do we have to spend on defense? I mean, what did the Department of Government Efficiency promise again? That they were going to cut tax waste and fraud, right? Did they? Does anybody feel like we had any cost savings? National Security Agency, 10 billion, NASA, 24 billion, Department of Education, 68 billion. It's like, what are we doing with that money, right? If they're asking for the budget, like, are we vetting? Right? That's why we have the Office of Management and Budget, right? We're supposed to understand where our money is going, who's it going to. I mean, it's one thing for them to try to pass a bill that says, hey, we need, this much money to protect our airports, to fund immigration, to protect our borders, whatever it is, right? To stop immigration in this case, right? With the Department of Homeland Security. But where exactly is that money going? Like how much I mean, personally, this is why Democrats were trying to block any ICE related measures from any of the bills that were trying to be passed for the Department of Homeland Security. I don't want my money going toward that. Yeah, of course we need national security. I don't want to just throw out immigrants that, are seeking asylum or people that, are in the process of getting their citizenship. That's what we're doing. It's carte blanche for the government. We need a little bit more detail here. And it's so nebulous, right? The whole idea of our taxes being taken from us, it's extremely ambiguous, right? We really don't understand where the money goes. The breakdown is helpful. I'm happy to see exactly where our money is going, but I'm sure there's a lot of corruption in the midst of all of that. But this gives us a better picture as to, what we're looking at. We should still continue to challenge the government because, again, if you're not trying to hold them accountable, if we're not asking questions as media and journalists, then again, they can get away with anything. They can take $1 billion and allocate it to whomever. That's why we had this anti-weaponization fund, $1.8 billion. That's our money. You wanted to pay January 6th rioters. So we should continue to question the government as to where our taxes are going, how they're being appropriated, who gets what and when. I wish we could actually vote on it directly because there's a lot of stuff that's written in these bills. I mean, these bills are thousands of pages long. Nobody's going to read that. Nobody's going to read the fine print. And at the end of the day, we also see the government sidestepping a lot of court orders and different bylaws. And what do? They end up saying, all right, whatever, we're going to give this money to this person. Maybe it was written in the bill. Maybe it wasn't. That's why we need some checks and balances here. But it's just good to see where our money is being spent. And again, if the majority of our money is going toward Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, I'm okay with that. I think it's terrible that we're paying 14% of our government spending, like 14% of our government spending is on debt, just debt servicing. That's a huge problem. That means either interest rates have to go down or we need to resolve our budget deficit and break even somehow. If we reduce our spending, then of course we would pay less on our debt. But it's good to see the breakdown there. Okay. Next topic. And I am loving this topic because what? Who doesn't love a good old mosquito? I just got bit. I just got bit by like 2 mosquitoes. Sons of bitches. Now, just so you know, Google is actually involved in a mosquito-related program because this is not just a bug problem anymore. It is a public health, disease control, data automation, and biology problem. Now, when I first read the headline, I thought we were going to release like mosquito robots, which would have been really cool. But who knows if the other mosquitoes would find them attractive, and that's the whole point of this. The official EPA filing says Google applied for permission to release male mosquitoes carrying Wolbachia, a naturally occurring bacterium found in many insects. The proposed program involves a mosquito species connected to diseases like West Nile virus and St. Louis encephalitis. The number of people are hearing, what's being reported is that roughly 64 million mosquitoes over 2 years will be released. The EPA filing breaks it down like this: 16 male mosquitoes in Florida in year 1, 16 million in Florida in year 2, 16 million in California in year 1, another 16 million in California in year 2. That adds up to 64 million That adds up to 64 million male mosquitoes. So why are we releasing these mosquitoes? And why the hell is Google involved here? Now, the important part is these are male mosquitoes. Male mosquitoes do not bite people. I did not know that. Female mosquitoes bite because they need blood to produce eggs. Sons of bitches. I hate mosquitoes. Everybody hates mosquitoes, but we're going to get to that in a second. Male mosquitoes mostly feed on nectar. So you really shouldn't be mad at male mosquitoes. It's just the females trying to reproduce. Now, the idea is not release mosquitoes so people get bitten more, right? I mean, like, who the hell likes mosquitoes? The idea is release male mosquitoes that mate with wild females, and because of the Wolbachia mismatch, the eggs do not hatch, so they can have sex and try to reproduce. But over time, the target mosquito population drops, which makes us safer. So this is essentially mosquito birth control. It is population suppression. And I think everybody hates mosquitoes enough that they're like, you know what? I don't mind. We want to kill mosquitoes. However, the question then is about why can't we do this in a more natural or organic way? Because bats actually eat about 3 million mosquitoes a year. Bats eat moths, beetles, flies, midges, many other insects. Now, we can't just release more bats the way we release lab-raised male mosquitoes. Bats need habitats, they migrate, they carry their own disease concerns, they're protected in many places. But if they're eating 3 million mosquitoes a year, I mean, how many bats do we need? Why can't we just solve it with the bat program? I think that would be an interesting fix. So why Google? Because Google, through its life sciences and technology operations, has worked on the industrial side of this problem: mass rearing, sorting males from females, using automation, sensors, data systems. Now, of course, the hard part is producing millions of mosquitoes, sorting them accurately, releasing them in controlled areas, tracking them, and measuring the wild population. And that's why a technology company is getting involved. Interesting. I would never have guessed that Google, of all companies, which I invest in, I absolutely love Google. And man, they have dozens of products, everything from search to data centers to semiconductor chips to phones to Android software. I mean, Wi-Fi units. What don't they make? But for them to get involved in our ecosystem, it's very interesting. Now, the next question we have is what are the ecological implications, if there are any? Because if mosquitoes are food for bats, birds, frogs, fish, and other insects, what happens when humans reduce them? They need mosquitoes to survive. The answer, of course, depends on scale and species. The program does not eliminate all mosquitoes. It targets a specific species in specific release areas. So other mosquitoes and other insects remain in the food web. That does not mean no impact. It means the impact is more targeted than spraying broad insecticides and and killing as many insects at and killing as many insects at once and killing as many insects at once as possible. Okay, interesting. So because it's controlled, we should rest assured. That's what I'm hearing. The argument for this technology is that it may reduce disease-carrying mosquitoes with less chemical spraying. I remember in New York City when we had West Nile fears back in the early 2000s, they were flying helicopters and drones all over New York City, spraying pesticides, and we were just breathing all of that in. Who the hell knew what the health complications were or health implications were? But this is very difficult because you can't just, you're not going to just capture 64 million males. They are going to be releasing females because accidentally they will get released. How do they only verify male only sorting? How do they monitor the wild mosquito population? How long do releases continue? Are they going to need more than 2 years? What happens when the releases stop? Do they grow again? Do they multiply? But it's just interesting to see Google's foray into this because mosquito control is now an engineering, automation, biology, and public health problem. How much they're getting paid for this, there's no money on that. It is experimental, but they get to collect the data, and the data is extremely valuable. So I thought this was a super interesting story. All right, next topic. Oh man, and this topic's so hard because honestly, it's just like this woman is just, I don't know if we can even call her a woman. Man, she's just a piece of shit, man. For anyone that has a daughter, I mean, when we think about our loved ones, she is just a piece of shit, man. Like, I just finished reading the book Nobody's Girl. I mean, Virginia Giuffre calls her a demon, a devil. I mean, this woman, she's not even a wolf in sheep's clothing. She is a demon. Now, this is Ghislaine Maxwell. She was convicted in federal court. She's sentenced to 20 years for helping Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse minors. Of course, she's in a minimum security prison, all female. She's in Texas currently. And the question for this topic is, would Donald Trump actually pardon Ghislaine Maxwell? Probably. I have a feeling that after Trump is president, maybe after he dies, I have a feeling that all of the facts are one day going to come out. The facts always come out. Always. There's nothing that you can hide forever. It always comes out. And I think one day it's going to come out and we're going to hear that Donald Trump committed egregious crimes against children under 18 years of age. And hopefully all of the people that are part of this sex trafficking ring go down, because I've read enough, and I keep bringing this up. Like, I keep reporting on this from multiple angles. We're going to get to Paolo Zampanelli. Like, we have to get to, Paolo Zampoli. We're going to get to him. We got to get, we just have to keep hitting this, because I'm not attacking the Epstein story because I want to take down the government. I'm attacking the Epstein story because it's women like Virginia Giuffre, Courtney Wild. I mean, they were taken advantage of. So then you got to ask yourself, like, do you care about our youth or not? It's not about calling it a sex trafficking ring. It's not about, he had sex with a minor. He took advantage of who? It's not about that. It's like, just, can we think about the crime for a second? These women were preyed upon. Could you imagine, like, your daughter, your sister, taking a walk somewhere, Ghislaine Maxwell, or one of her minions, not her minions, but one of the young girls that she recruited, they were having young girls recruit other girls. So could you imagine someone taking advantage of her femininity and saying, oh, hey, it's just a woman approaching me, right? Oh, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm doing all right. How are things going? I'm okay. What you up to? Nothing. I just left the house. I need to go for a walk. Is everything okay with you? Yeah, everything's fine. Can I ask you how old you are? I'm 15. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just, I have this, I'm friends with like this, I work for like this really rich man. He has like this big mansion. Um, do you want to just go hang out, get a little release for a little bit? If you're not doing anything. Okay, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, let's go over there. So then you go over there, and then these girls are faced with the idea of, hey, I can make $200 to $300 if I give this man a massage. So then I start giving him a massage. Maybe the next time around, they call them over again. Now they're asking them to take off their clothes. I mean, these women's lives were ruined. They had no chance. And of course, you have very powerful people. These are all the powerful people involved. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is exactly what happened. Thousands of young women have experienced, tens of thousands of young women have experienced this, not just with Jeffrey Epstein, with Harvey Weinstein, with all of these people that have taken advantage of their positional power, their political power, and have committed egregious crimes against our youth. That's why I keep talking about this story. I mean, seriously, when Donald Trump is asked about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, he says, maybe I'm considering it, I'm mulling it over. Why would you pardon this woman? She was the enabler. Jeffrey Epstein was having sex with minors. She was the one bringing the minors to him. How on earth could you pardon her? It's unbelievable. And to me, the only reason why he would pardon her, in my opinion, is because he's guilty. And she did a good job. She was a good girl, just like she would tell all the young girls, you're a good girl. After the girl would have sex with either Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein or both, or one of their friends, their rich and famous friends, she would say, you're a good girl. That's what Trump is saying to Ghislaine Maxwell. You're a good girl. You didn't say anything. You said the right thing in the deposition. What did she say? She said that she never saw Trump with Epstein. That's what she said. Right? She essentially exonerated him. She absolved him of pretty much any wrongdoing because she's such an important figure in this scandal. We're talking about girls 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. You know what Jeffrey Epstein believed? You know what this man believed? He believed that once a woman starts menstruating, she should be able to have sex. And because women have multiple orgasms, they should therefore have multiple sex partners. And because we have different standards and statutes for what the consensual age should be around the world, therefore, there should be no age, because 18 in the United States is as arbitrary as any other number. That's what Jeffrey Epstein believed. I mean, guys, there's just too much evidence, all right? Thousands of photos of women in his homes. Dozens of witnesses that came forward, dozens of victims, pictures, videos. We have so much evidence. Why do you think that the FBI is not releasing the information? It's because the FBI has completely been politicized and weaponized. It's so simple. There is nothing to doubt. And you have a lot of people in these positions, and you know what they say? They're disgusting. They're disgusting. You know what they say? They throw out these terms. Well, they took the money. Oh man, there was like an MIT scientist that said that about Virginia Giuffre. Well, they took the money. She took the money, right? Because Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would give the girls 12, 14, 15 years old $200 on the way out. After they gave him a massage, the massage was a massage and sex, and then cleaned up after him. That's what was happening every day. He said that he wanted to orgasm. He needed to orgasm at least 3 times a day. That's what Jeffrey Epstein said. He said it multiple times. We're about to release this little demon. Look at this. This is a human being on the right-hand side. Forget Jeffrey Epstein, a devil. This is a human being. Do you see her smiling? This woman, this is a woman? I'm asking the women out there. This is like, she classifies as a woman? This is a fucking demon. I don't know what else to say. Now, of course, she's been appealing the courts because she believes she should be free. She called Virginia Giuffre a lying bitch. Of course, Virginia Giuffre commits suicide before she released this book in 2025. The Supreme Court has declined to take up her case, Ghislaine Maxwell. So the legal question now is not whether she is innocent in the court system. It's about whether the president could use clemency. And the answer is yes, he can. Donald Trump, oh shit, man. You've done a lot of bad things as president. You've done a lot of bad things. But damn, if you pardon this woman, and I'll tell you right now, I used to be a big time gambler. I got money on the Knicks right now because they're definitely winning this championship. But I'll tell you, if Donald Trump, I do believe Donald Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I think it's going to happen at the end of his term. What the hell does he care? He's not going to be president anymore. What does he care? Nobody's going to give a shit. Just like the Bidens pardoned their son, Hunter Biden. Definitely political. People do it all the time. Power corrupts. And we see it at its finest here in the United States. We see it all over the world. Prime ministers, politicians all over the world. They're all taking advantage of the system. They're taking advantage of our money, our militaries, all of their positional power. They'll pay a price one day. It'll be by God. However, they're still breaking the law. And yeah, does Trump have the presidential power? He does. He can grant a pardon. He can commute the sentence. A pardon is broader, right? It forgives the federal offense. A commutation does not erase the conviction, but it reduces the punishment. So he could do either one. Could Trump legally help Ghislaine Maxwell get out of prison? Yes. Will he do it? Well, first, Maxwell's side has been pushing for relief. Her lawyers have publicly discussed clemency. That matters because pardons usually do not come out of nowhere. Somebody asks, somebody petitions, somebody makes the case. So actively, they are seeking clemency. Again, maybe she has to stay in there for 2 more years because I do think a pardon is coming by way of Trump. Second, Maxwell reportedly gave a long interview to the Justice Department and said that she did not witness Trump doing anything improper in her presence. Now that creates a political question because if someone connected to Epstein gives testimony favorable to Trump, people are going to ask whether clemency becomes part of the conversation, right? Is this kind of quid pro quo? I'm pretty sure nobody told Ghislaine Maxwell not to say anything, maybe only her inner circle, but she knows what she's doing. Her absolving Trump here gives her better chances to get out of prison. And it already took her about 30 years. There were warnings of Epstein before Virginia Giuffre came out. There were warnings as early as 1990. That information is with the FBI. They just have refused to release it. And now we're talking about pardoning this devil. This devil. You think she deserves a pardon? The devils. This reptilian, this animal here on the left, he's not even, how is this a human being? Thousands of women, thousands of girls. Guys, what do you think happens if a woman is sexually abused? Her entire life and trajectory is altered. What I'm really asking here is how are we forgiving this in society? Like, how are we forgiving this debt in society? These were kids. What else is a child? I'm not saying let's just look at the 18-year-old age that we set here in the United States. These are kids. Can you put your own daughter or niece or sister into the equation? What if this 47-year-old man, 50, 60-year-old man paid your sister or your daughter $200 to have sex with them? Does that change the story now? I just don't understand how we collectively, like, it's not about release the files with Epstein. Like, I'm just challenging the integrity of our entire government. The FBI is like, what is the FBI? The FBI is supposed to protect us. They're supposed to protect our children. You're telling me that information predates such a public case as this one? 1990? We long knew about him raping these minors, raping, taking lives away. She commits suicide. She was the most notable, Virginia Giuffre. How many others commit suicide? How many others went into the sex trade or prostitution? How many lives were taken? Thousands of lives were taken. People that were promised either money, models, internships, whatever it was, anything to coerce them into having sex with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, guys, Ghislaine Maxwell was having sex with all of these women as well. It wasn't just Jeffrey Epstein. She was having sex with them. She was fondling them. She was touching them. She was licking them. She was having them touch her. They were having threesomes. She was taking naked pictures of them. Ghislaine Maxwell is just as guilty as Jeffrey Epstein. I don't understand how on earth we're sitting here and speaking about a potential pardon. You know how disgusting that is? Like, in my opinion, the entire United States should revolt. This woman had to take her own life for what? She's American. She was an American girl. Her life was robbed from her at 15 years old. Do you know what the requirements were for recruiting young girls? They have to look between the ages of 12 and 17, a little bit on the vulnerable side. And they have to agree with, doing something for something in return. So that's how they would recruit the girls. Hey, how's it going? No, I'm okay, Hey, if you're having a little trouble, I work for this really rich guy and he'll give you like $200. He wants like a foot massage. Okay. But I'm just warning you, sometimes he wants you to take off your clothes, something like that. What do you think a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl is going to do? Some of them would run away. A lot of them did, I'm sure. I think the overwhelming majority did. But you are going to catch some. If you keep inquiring, they were going out there hunting for young girls. It's not enough. I'm not asking you to turn on Trump. This isn't even about Trump per se. I mean, it is, but part of it is. But are we really about to is our nation? I'm asking, like, what does America stand for? If our nation is actually willing to pardon this woman, this devil, this demon, she is not a woman. She is a disgrace. If we are willing to pardon this animal that had sex with our children, she had sex with our children, with our sisters, with our daughters. A 35-year-old woman at the time. What happens when a teacher does it? They get arrested right away, right? What, she doesn't? It took over 30 years, thousands of lives ruined. Her touching and fondling our young girls, our sisters, our daughters, our nieces. It took over 30 years. Not for the FBI. Fuck the FBI. Not for the FBI. Because the FBI at this point is complicit. What they did here, and me growing up as a kid, I used to think, oh yeah, CIA, FBI, all these, these government agencies, they're all great. Yeah, they're for America. No, the FBI didn't drop the ball here. They enabled it. The warnings came out decades ago. Because the FBI didn't do anything, it allowed them to continue their assault. Thousands of young women, thousands. You just remember, if this was your daughter or sister, I don't think you'd even think twice. Now, Trump has not always treated the Maxwell question as permanently closed. He's made comments over the years that kept the door from completely being shut. He said in 2020 that he wished her well. He later said he had not thought about a pardon, but also said he would look at or discuss pardon questions with the Justice Department. Why on earth would President Trump do that? Why would you do such a thing, Mr. President? Why? Why? I'll tell you why. It's because she was a good girl. You're a good girl, right? Just like she would tell all of the girls that they prostituted, that they raped, that they took advantage of. Ghislaine Maxwell, you're a good girl. Good girl for not saying anything against Mr. Trump while being deposed. You're a good girl. And now I'm going to pardon you. I think it's going to happen. I think this is all but a guarantee. It's not enough to call this a political controversy. What do we believe in, America? I'm asking you, what do we believe in here? What do we stand for? When a sexual predator, a child predator, gets beat up in the street or in prison, right? When they get their just due, what do we say? Good, an eye for an eye. The punishment fits the crime. They should have killed them, right? Some people will just say that casually. What happens when it happens on the most grandiose stage and these people are involved? How much are you willing to let Trump get away with? He's willing to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell? Do you know how egregious that is? So you're literally saying that your sister, your daughter, 14 years of age, 15, 16, 12 years old, their lives do not matter to shit. Their lives are essentially meaningless. You're saying that your sister, your daughter can be raped, can be taken advantage of, can be fondled, can be paid $200 for a massage with a 50-year-old man and a 50-year-old woman. That's what you're saying, right? If you would be okay with Donald Trump pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, you are effectively saying that. Go ahead, take my daughter, take my 14-year-old daughter. 50-year-old man, go ahead, have your way with her. Oh, 50-year-old woman, you wanna have sex with my daughter? Ghislaine Maxwell, 50-year-old woman, go ahead. She's 14, go ahead. She's 15 years old, go ahead. That's what you're saying. What does America stand for? When are we going to say enough? I'm not going to sit here and throw out these buzzwords, accountability, blah, blah, blah. What do we stand for? Of course, this is rhetorical. No one's just going to give up their precious daughter or sister or niece to a 50-year-old man. You're not going to give up your 14, 15-year-old daughter to a 50-year-old man or a 50-year-old woman so that they can molest her, right? So why would you be okay with our president, our freaking president? Why would you be okay with our president pardoning someone that has done that to thousands of daughters? Why? Because it's not your daughter? Because it's not your niece? Because it's not your sister? Put things into context, man. I am not going to relent. This woman should a 20-year sentence? Mind you, only 3 people were able to come forward in her case. Because, of course, there was all this political bullshit happening, within the scandal. These people are so powerful that she only got 20 years. These people are so powerful that Jeffrey Epstein never went to prison. When he went to prison in 2009, he went to prison for what, like 13 months, 15 months? And he was essentially on house arrest because he could leave the prison at all hours of the day. He just had to come there and sleep at night. Who knows if he actually did? Are you kidding me? That's what happens to the rich and powerful. Do not excuse this. If Donald Trump pardons Ghislaine Maxwell, he needs to be impeached right away. I mean, he could be impeached for a whole bunch of other shit. But this is, I mean, y'all, like, you're literally, if the day Donald Trump pardons Ghislaine Maxwell comes, I would like for every mother, father, sister, brother, I'd like for, including sisters, I would like you to go to our sisters, daughters, nieces, and our mothers for that sake, and say, hey, I want you to know I'm okay with this. I'm okay with Donald Trump, our president, pardoning a sex trafficker, pardoning someone that took away lives like yours thousands and thousands and thousands of times over. I'm okay with it. And then, as you walk and you live your life, every young girl that you see out on the street, I'd like you to be reminded that you are an enabler. Because if you are okay with him pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, you are enabling it. We should never accept this. Again, it's not about drawing the line at 18 years old. That 18-year-old, I mean, that line is arbitrary. The government says 18 years old. There are different statutes all around the world. It's not the point. This is our youth. They were taken advantage of. What do we stand for as America? What do we stand for as Americans? I mean, seriously, where are our values and morals? You say that you're a Christian. You say that you're a devout Muslim. You say that you're a good Jew. Whatever you are, you say that you're a good citizen of this earth. That's what you say. You say that you're a good person, right? This is unacceptable then. Donald Trump cannot pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. We cannot accept it. That is a line. He's crossed over many. This is another one of those lines. He pardons Ghislaine Maxwell. We should be rioting at the Capitol, in my opinion. The Jan 6ers, they did that for a fake election hoax. It was not a rigged election. There has been no evidence whatsoever. There's a ton of evidence for the girls that were systematically raped and abused. Don't think that this is some remote idea. This is for all of the women that you see out there, including your own family members. The day that you're willing to take your daughter or sister or niece by the hand and go give her to a 50-year-old man or 50-year-old woman to mentally and physically abuse, that's the day that you can agree with Donald Trump pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. Because if he does this, you have to ask yourself, what is the public getting in return? You know what we are? A lower standard for our morals, a lower standard. We are saying that it is okay to abuse our daughters. It is okay to abuse adolescents. I don't want to hear from people, oh yeah, we have to protect our children. You know, children shouldn't be smoking. Children shouldn't be drinking. You know, children shouldn't stay out too late. I don't want to hear any type of protection if you are okay with him pardoning this monster. Ghislaine Maxwell, honestly, she should get the death penalty. And I you know, we can do a segment on the death penalty because I'm not the judge and jury. I believe in God. I believe God should, you know, you're gonna pay your price either way. But if we don't kill her, we should at least, you know, if we don't execute Ghislaine Maxwell, which we're not, right? That's not what the trajectory is here. She should stay in prison. She should have like She should have like 1,000 life sentences. She has 20 years. She can be released in her late 70s. It's just not fair, man. It is just not fair. All right. Next topic. All right. Oh. All right. Our next topic. Can you make one more dollar? Now, the premise here is simple. We talk about the economy through big numbers, right? Jobs report, inflation. The jobs report just came out on Friday. Consensus estimates were 80,000 jobs. We hired 172,000. Now, these are through surveys, so the information isn't always accurate. Sometimes there are revisions down to historical data. Sometimes there are revisions up, but we actually revised our numbers up this time from the past few months, which is good. That means we have a good, positive, robust economy, at least when it comes to jobs, because 70% of our gross domestic product, all of our sales, all of our revenues as a country comes from consumer spending. That means that we're going on Amazon, we're going to retail, we're buying haircuts, we are purchasing things. If we don't purchase, we don't have an economy. 70% of every dollar is us opening up our wallets and buying stuff. Now, usually when you see good job growth, when you see low unemployment, right, you look at that as a good thing. But how do you really measure if the economy is doing good or not? And I'm talking about each individual person here. What I'm essentially saying is if you wanted to improve your life incrementally, only by the dollar, we are only talking about in regards to money, right? We are not getting into semantics here so far, because if you're a retail worker and you're making $16 an hour and you can go get $18 an hour at another retail job, but it's further from you, of course you have to look at the quality of life trade-off, right? If you have to travel further, spend more money on transportation, you have to look at the entire equation before you make such a decision. But I'm asking, in regards to the health of the economy, overall, there are many measurements: jobs report, inflation, gas, eggs, GDP, unemployment, wages, all of that matters. But I think a simpler question that gets closer to real life is, in your current job, in your current industry, could you go out tomorrow and make one more dollar per hour? So if you're making 150,000 per year right now, could you go out and apply to another job and get $155,000 per year? Could you? If you're a retail worker and you're making $20 an hour, could you go get 21 or 22 or $24 an hour out there? Same type of work, same title, same field. Maybe you change the title a little bit, doesn't matter. But could you improve your pay by even $1? That, I think, is a much more serious and finite labor market test. Because the headline unemployment rate, it can look fine, right? 4.3% is healthy. That's what just popped up in May 2026. Again, we added 172,000 jobs. Average hourly earnings rose to about $37.53. That's up from 3.4% from a year. That's up about 3.4% from a year earlier, which is good because that's in parallel with inflation. On paper, that's a healthy job market. Of course, you look deeper at the numbers. There are about 7.3 million unemployed people. There are 2 million long-term unemployed people, meaning people unemployed for 27 weeks or more. There were about 4.8 million people working part-time for economic reasons. That means they wanted full-time work or had hours cut, but they were stuck with part-time. There were about 6.2 million people not in the labor force who said they wanted a job. And the broader underemployment rate, known as U6, was about 8.1%, meaning that people want jobs, they want better jobs, but they can't find them. So the economy can add jobs and still leave a lot of people without leverage. That's where the one more dollar test comes in. And this was just me pondering the idea, right? Because again, you can throw out all of these numbers, all of these reports, but I'm asking you, isn't this a better test for how healthy the economy is? Because usually, like right now, I'm okay in my life. I have a full-time job. I work remotely. I'm okay. I can pay my bills. I'm all right. Are things expensive in New York City? Absolutely. Do people around me tell me things are expensive? That's all we talk about. That's common fodder every day. But to say that the economy is doing bad, I don't know about that. This is what we do on the news show, right? I read all day long. I read a physical book every single day. I finish a book about a week. I read articles all day long. I do a ton of research for the show. This is all I read, right? People always complaining. The people that are actually having issues, like, I don't know, the single mom that, has to work 2 jobs, still can't feed 2 kids. Those are the stories we actually have to hear. But I'm talking about in general, are people actually struggling? And if they are struggling, can they do something about it? Because if they can't, then I think we have a problem. But if they can, meaning that they can make the incremental dollar, then I think that the economy is probably more healthy than it seems. We can complain all day. The complaints should come from the people that actually need it, that are actually suffering. So if you are being paid $16 an hour and you can realistically get $18 an hour elsewhere, same field, without destroying your commute or schedule, that worker has leverage. You have leverage. That means that I think the economy is pretty robust. That means the effort is actually on you. If a server can move to a better restaurant and earn more per shift, that worker has leverage. But if people cannot move, cannot get interviews, cannot get hours, or can only make more money by accepting worse conditions, then the headline number is missing something. That means we actually do have a problem. Forget about the unemployment rate. Forget about how many jobs we added. That doesn't mean anything materially to any American citizen anyway. You don't really give a shit about that number. Economists do, investment managers do. That's how they justify spending or investing. They're just trying to make a case with things, right? We do want to see the labor numbers from our government. But that's where the context of personal responsibility and economic structure meet. Because in my opinion, the economy is fairly strong. And if you have a gripe with that, if you think that the economy is not affording you enough opportunity, then we need to hear your voice. Now, of course, there aren't many vehicles in which you can get that message out, but those are the people that we need to hear from, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Call 311? You're going to call the mayor's office? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody gives a shit. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and closed mouths don't get fed. So if you are experiencing hardship, and specifically, if you can't make that incremental dollar, like I think for anyone struggling out there, right? We're just talking about money here, only money, not quality of life and everything else. It's intertwined, but we're only talking about money. For anyone else that needs money out there, anyone that needs money, I don't care what your job or occupation is, I'm asking you, if you started applying today to 10 jobs a day, you were relentless with this, do you think you can get the same type of job for more money tomorrow? That is the premise. And I believe that in the United States, most people can. Therefore, I would say that overall we have a healthy economy. I'm not pointing to job numbers. They're important. You have to take them into account. I'm just trying to look at this from a different angle. I'm trying to measure the health of our economy in a different way. Because if you can't, we need those numbers. Now, of course, that's extremely hard to measure, right? That's why we have underemployment rates, which says 8.1% of underemployment. That those are people seeking more hours, higher pay. I mean, that's a pretty high number, but these are just surveys. Overall, are people making enough? Even if you're living check to check, the majority of us are. But are you okay? Are you content with your life? Are you okay? If you are okay, and you still have that ability, you still have that leverage, that wiggle room to make more money if you just jump ship and go to another job, then I think we have a healthy job market. I think we have a healthy economy. Instead of all of these other numbers that we read, jobs, inflation, GDP. If the jobs are there, the wages are there, the hours are there. And if the trade-offs are reasonable, then yes, the individual has to ask. I'm putting the onus on you. Am I doing everything to improve my situation? If you are not, do you have the right to complain? I'm not saying that you don't have the right to complain. You can complain about whatever. I mean, like, I complain all day. That's all I do, bitch and complain. Everybody that knows me, I just bitch and complain about stuff because, you know, that's what we do, right? What else are we going to do? If I open up my mouth, I got to bitch and complain about something. That's what we do, right? We just talk shit all day. But are you applying? Are you asking for more money? Are you learning skills? You don't have to go to college for that. You don't have to pay for any education. You have to pay with your time. Are you looking to change employers? Because that's the fastest way to get a raise. You're not going to get a raise staying at your job. Of course, I'm generalizing here. Anybody that wants to go get $5,000 to $10,000 more dollars a year, jump ship. Guys, go Google Forbes. The research and analysis has been done. We have a verdict. If you leave, you can make like over $1 million more dollars over your lifetime if you jump ship. If you keep leaving job after job, after about 2 years, you're going to make an insane amount of money. And then, of course, if you invest that money, your money will compound. You will become a millionaire by the end of your life, by retirement. Of course, it depends what trade you're in, but I'm just asking you, are you doing all that you can so that you can maximize your potential? If you aren't, then you kind of have to look in the mirror. I'm all about having compassion and just, you know, trying to be understanding with my fellow man. But we also have to, you know, check ourselves here, right? Is the economy okay enough? Is it robust enough? If it is, then, and you're still struggling, are you doing everything in your power to maximize your potential? If you can move from $16 to $18 an hour, from $25 to $28 an hour, from $60,000 to $70,000, and you're not taking on any trade-offs, virtually none, That's how you experience a healthy economy. That's how you take advantage of the system in America, right? You should be asking yourself, can I make more money next month than I made this month? Can I improve my life with just a little bit more effort, which is not necessarily the job, it's just applying, right? In this case, can I trade my time for a better dollar? Because your time should go to the highest bidder. I don't give a shit who I work for. I don't. And I never have. Of course, I want, my company to have good values, a good moral compass. But at the end of the day, my money, my time goes to the highest bidder. I don't give a shit what we're doing. We could be creating tires. We could be solving world hunger. One's more novel than the other, sure. More honorable than the other. But I just want to get paid the most. If one's paying me 125, the other one's paying me 180, I'm taking 180. So can you trade your time for more money? Can you go out there and make the incremental dollar? If the answer is yes, then you should be applying. You should be doing everything within your power, within your control to make that happen for yourself. Invest your money and you will have, I think, taken care of that area of your life. And if the answer is yes, which I think it is for most people, then that's a sign of a strong job market. If the answer is no for millions of people, then the economy has a deeper problem than the unemployment rate is showing. That should be the test. Not about whether the economy added jobs or inflation data, but did workers gain power? Do workers have power? And if you are leaving money on the table, you only have yourself to look at in the mirror. Okay, last topic, we are going to talk about we are going to read some final excerpts from Nobody's Girl. Now, again, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, she commits suicide in 2025 prior to releasing this book. And I just want to read a couple of excerpts from this book. She was the most notable figure in the Epstein scandal. Epstein liked to share with me what he insisted were scientific justifications for his yearnings for young girls. For example, he would only have sex with girls who had started menstruating. Why? So he could assert that since they were biologically able to bear children, they were of age. I was flabbergasted when he said this stuff, but I held my tongue. No matter how young a girl looked or how sexually inexperienced she was, if she had her period, he felt he could defend his abuse of her as part of the natural order of things. I was never sure who he imagined making this argument to, the girls themselves, his business associates, law enforcement officers, himself. But it was clear that he took a certain glee in what he saw as a loophole in society's moral code. The fact that different nations and states define the age of consent differently, in Florida it's 18, in New York it's 17, in England it's 16, only gave him ammunition. He said these inconsistencies proved these laws were arbitrary and meaningless. No one could convince him that sex with minors was wrong, because no one could agree on what a minor was. Epstein also claimed that because women, unlike men, can have multiple orgasms, that meant they were supposed to have multiple sexual partners as well. His logic was loopy, propped up by pseudoscience, but he presented it as reality. I never challenged him. It was easier to pretend to believe him. Early on, he'd made clear that during sexual encounters, I should appear to be enjoying what he did to me or what he made me do to him. I want bubbly and energetic, he said. Nobody wants a dead horse. So when he'd ask me questions about my body's response to him to describe having an orgasm, say, I would do so. even though most times I had faked it and had to lie. Of course, sometimes there was so much stimulation from vibrators or sex toys, particularly during the orgies that Epstein liked to orchestrate, that I couldn't help but climax. When that happened, it sparked confusing feelings in me, just as it had in my childhood. Did having an orgasm mean I was a willing participant? I suspected that it did, and that only increased my self loathing. And again, this is just such a terrible book. What I like about what Virginia Giuffre did here is she was absolutely fearless, but there were points like during the book where I was like, I just wanted to put the book down because I just wanted to stop reading. I was like, I can't read this. It was terrible to read. However, she actually stops in certain parts of the book and she's like, I know this is tough. I know this is hard to read, but I ask you to keep going. And I ask you to do it for all of the other survivors. This is her final chapter in the book. It's actually called Nobody's Girl. Sexual trafficking should not be a secret, only to be whispered about in hushed tones or not at all. It is a horrible trauma-inducing crime, and we must talk about it if we ever want it to end. That's part of why I wrote this book, and I've tried on every page to be transparent. I've made mistakes in my life, and I've had moments I'm not proud of, but I haven't let those human flaws keep me from telling my story. As my collaborator and I worked together to finish this book, she sent me a line by the writer Helen Rosner that rings true to me. Memoir is the art of shining a light behind you, picking at the stitches of your life to see how it was made. To see how it was made. That's what I've tried to do, to examine my life in the hope of destigmatizing victims' experiences. Because only by speaking out can we move ourselves and others to act. I'm sorry to say that for all that's happened, more action is needed, much more. Because some people still think that Epstein was an anomaly, an outlier, and those people are wrong. While the sheer number of victims Epstein preyed upon may put him in a class by himself, he was no outlier. The way he viewed women and girls as playthings to be used and discarded is not uncommon among certain powerful men who believe they are above the law. And many of those men are still going about their daily lives, enjoying the benefits of their power. Don't be fooled by those in Epstein's circle who say they didn't know what Epstein was doing. Anyone who spent any significant amount of time with Epstein saw him touching girls in ways you wouldn't want a creepy old man touching your daughter. They can say they didn't know he was raping children, but they were not blind. Not to mention the fact that many prominent people were still associating with him years after his conviction. Epstein offered many of the men in his circle sex with females he and Maxwell trafficked, both girls and women. I know because I lived it. Because even the men who didn't partake of the favors Epstein offered could see the naked photos on his walls and the naked girls on his islands or by his swimming pools. Epstein not only didn't hide what was happening, he took a certain glee in making people watch. Because he could. And people did watch. Scientists, fundraisers from the Ivy League and other heralded institutions, titans of industry. They watched and they didn't care. Epstein is dead, but the attitude that allowed him to do what he did, it's alive and well. Yes, Me Too. The Me Too movement has led to certain prominent men losing their jobs. Other men have gone to prison. But just because justice has been served in a handful of high-profile cases doesn't mean we've solved the larger problem. A culture that tells girls their primary worth is to appeal to women. A culture that tells girls their primary worth is to appeal to men. A culture that tells men that young girls are the ideal, the younger, as Epstein said, the better. I'm not saying those cultural trends cause most. I'm not saying those cultural trends cause. I'm not saying those cultural trends cause most men to become child molesters, But I do believe that because of these societal, but I do believe that because of those societal forces, when a molester shows his face, many people tend to look the other way. Even as I've chronicled my history with Epstein and Maxwell, much has happened to keep the two of them in the news. The sale of Epstein's properties, for example, his Palm Beach home was sold to a developer for $18.5 million, his two islands in the Caribbean for $60 million, his Manhattan townhouse for $51 million, his New Mexico ranch, $27 million, and his Paris apartment for 8.2 million pounds. The money raised in these transactions has gone to Epstein's estate, which has helped fund restitution for victims. JP Morgan also eventually settled a lawsuit filed by the US Virgin Islands, agreeing to significant commitments to curtail human trafficking and a $75 million payment. That suit alleged that Jess Staley, a former top executive at the bank, may have been involved in Epstein's sex trafficking operation. Court papers in that case showed that Epstein shared photographs of young women with Staley and that the two men emailed each other using what appeared to be code words based on Disney characters. That was fun. Say hi to Snow White, Staley. Then 53 years old, emailed Epstein in July 2010. What character would you like next? Epstein, then 57, replied. Beauty and the Beast, Staley responded, to which Epstein replied, well, one side is available. It's not hard to imagine what Epstein meant. He had beauties at the ready. So y'all, again, I finished this book. It was a travesty. It's unacceptable what we allowed to go on for so many years. The FBI is absolutely at the center of all of this. They allowed it. If they would have listened to some of the victims that came forward in the early 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would have never gotten away with it. And I don't think anyone in modern day society wants grown adults, to take advantage of our children, to molest, to rape, to touch, to fondle our sisters and daughters. But you can't keep looking away here. We can't. Us taking a stand is not letting Donald Trump pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Us taking a stand is questioning all of the people and holding them accountable for what they did. Prince Andrew, he's a disgrace. He's a devil. He's a demon. How can you do this? How can you have sex with 15-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds? Again, before we look the other way, before we make statements like they took the money, right? This was this for that. I want you to realize that you are literally walking down your sister, daughter, or niece, the mothers of our world, the ones that give birth, right? The other sex here, for the men and for the women as well. The ones that look the other way. You are giving away your daughters, your sisters, your nieces. You are giving them away to these rich and powerful men. And you are saying, do with them what you please. Have sex with them, touch them, fondle them, molest them. That's what you're doing. Do not accept this. This woman took her own life. She fought, and she fought incredibly hard. She fought for over 20 years. And she took her own life. We have to honor her name and the thousands of victims, tens of thousands of victims Do not forget Harvey Weinstein. Do not forget Jeffrey Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, Paolo Zampoli. Do not forget Donald Trump. Do not forget these names. Because if Donald Trump really wanted to, he would have released the Epstein files in its entirety. The FBI is complicit here. I'm sure the CIA is as well. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The evidence is out there. And unless we listen to these girls, and unless you are willing to walk your loved ones away to these rich and powerful men, and women for that matter. Remember, Ghislaine Maxwell raped these children as well. She had sex with them as well. Unless you're willing to do that, you should never accept this again. Thank you for watching.